Hi there. Okay, so this is a video from an exact problem from your Delta Math assignment. So you can see that you have a function f of x, and they also tell you that f of 8 equals 0. So this is an important piece here. So I'm just going to pause right here for a second and highlight what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this f of 8 equals 0. So what this tells us, it tells us a few things. If I write it down here, since f of 8 equals 0, this means that x minus 8 is a factor. Okay, and we'll come back to this idea again, but this 8 and 0, this is telling us how to set up our problem here. And that's really our biggest step one, is just to get it set up. So if f of 8 equals 0, that means that if I'm plugging in 8, I'll get out 0 as my remainder. So that's your first piece of information. So what's outside on the ledge and what you can expect your remainder to be. And then to continue to set this up, we're just going to use our coefficients from our functions. So we had 2x squared, we had negative 12, we had 2x cubed, we had negative 12x squared, minus 28x, and then minus 32. So this is our setup. So the 8 comes from the f of 8, and it equaled 0, so that will be what we expect our remainder to be. So once it's all set up, now you can use your rules for synthetic division. So remember, we're going to add down and multiply up. Okay, and it's actually kind of on a diagonal. So if you want to write it like this, you're going to multiply upwards. So we're going to add down, we get 2, and multiply it by 8, and we get 16. We're just going to keep that pattern going. So add down, we get 4, multiply up, we get 32. We're multiplying it by 8. Add down, we get 4, multiply up, we get a positive 32. When we add down, we get 0. So it does work out. So this is our synthetic division is now complete. So we use this, okay? So I've already had this filled out on this page. It's the same answer that we've gotten. We're going to use this to continue to find more zeros. So what this means when we get our result from division, if I multiply that times what I was beginning with, what I was dividing by, that's a way that we can write our original function. So you can see this is where we found that x minus 8 was a factor because we had 8 and 0. And this is what was left over. So our 2x squared plus 4x plus 4. So we have this written out. They're being multiplied. Now on the next step, we're going to continue this. On the next slide, we're continuing the same step. And it's just basically, now that we have these two things being multiplied, we set it equal to 0. And then because they're both being multiplied to equal 0, you separate them and set both pieces equal to 0 and solve. So it'll be a little bit different each time. So sometimes you might have a little bit more work, sometimes you might have a little bit less. Over here we need to add 8. And so we have one of our values so far, and that's 8 equals x. And now over here, what we can do is we can use a quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula will always work for quadratics, and if you remember it, it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac, and the whole thing is over 2a. So we can just take our values from here, and I'm just going to zoom in, and we're going to plug in our a, our b, and our c. So our b value, I'll just write underneath, we have our a, our b, our c. Our b value is 4, so we're going to have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of our b squared, so 4 squared, minus 4, times our a, which is 2, times our c, which is 4. And that's all going to be over 2 times a, and our a is 2. So you can see I just plugged in our a, b, and c. Now we'll simplify, starting from the inside out. So 4 squared is 16, minus 32, all over 4. So we have x equals negative 4 plus or minus square root of negative 16 over 4. Now when you're simplifying this little part over here, our final answer, you do need to remember that the square root of a negative number is I. So it's just basically whatever the square root is, so it would be the square root of 16 is 4. And then because it was negative, we have an I. And then all over 4. And then also because this is all, each and every term is divisible by 4, it's going to be negative 1 plus or minus I, because we divided a 4 out of each term. So if this part's tricky, I would say look up how to simplify complex numbers. Or you can always just shoot me an email and I can help you out with that again.